Are you planning a romantic weekend in Florence and you want to surprise your other half with something really special? Florence is an excellent place for a romantic getaway, and with a bit of imagination and a good dose of planning, you can organize some truly unique experience. Florence is a perfect place where to fall in love. Let me guide you through the most romantic corners of the city. I think that Florence is one of the most romantic places on the earth, with the perfectly preserved historical center, narrow streets, panoramic views, and the Renaissance architecture. It really creates a perfect climate for romance. The beauty of Florence surprises and amazes even us almost every day when we walk through the center. And visiting Florence with your other half is one of the best gifts you can actually imagine. It doesn't matter if during your stay you will decide to visit art gallery, if you will have a walk through the Florentine gardens, or you will climb some panoramic viewpoint, you will feel that here love is in the air. I think that the most romantic place in Florence are actually our gardens. There is nothing better than a walk through the Bovoli, through the Bardini, or through the Rose Garden. I still go for romantic walks through the Florentine gardens with my own husband. We love to sit down somewhere in a quiet place, looking at a beautiful view on Brunelleschi's dome. It's really, I think, one of the best experiences that you can plan during your stay. What are other interesting and romantic activities in Florence? There is a really wide choice. You can go for a romantic dinner with a view, get lost in one of the Florentine museums, or organize some really romantic tour on the Arno River. Let me advise you on some of the most interesting romantic activities in town. Don't you think that visiting together a beautiful art museum such as the Uffizi Gallery isn't a romantic idea? I think the Florentine museums are a perfect place for a date. You can explore the Uffizi Gallery, the Palatine Gallery at the Pitti Palace, or you can pay a visit to Michelangelo's David and explore the collection of the Galleria dell'Accademia. What about visiting the museums at the sunset? Remember that during the summer, both the Uffizi and the Accademia galleries organize special evening openings, and so you can actually arrange this very exclusive visit at the sunset with very little number of other visitors, so the museum is half empty and there is this wonderful romantic atmosphere in the air. Very recommended for your romantic evening in town. We all know sunsets are some of the most romantic experiences that we always look for, and you don't need a seaside to enjoy a beautiful sunset. If you want to watch a sunset in Florence, you can climb the Piazzale Michelangelo to see the sun setting behind the Apennine Mountains. Piazzale Michelangelo is a panoramic terrace located above the center of Florence. From there, you can see a beautiful view on all of the most iconic monuments like the Cathedral, the Ponte Vecchio, the Santa Croce Basilica. Another spot where you will enjoy the sunset in Florence are the Florentine bridges and the so-called lungarni, the streets that run along the Arno River. From there, you will see the sky turning red and the sun disappearing on the horizon. And in particular, it's the winter when sunsets are truly romantic, and so winter is a really good moment for a romantic weekend in Florence. During your stay in town, you can organize a guided tour through the historical center. I think it can be an excellent idea for your romantic getaway. During the tour, you will discover the hidden corners of Florence, you will learn about the history of the city, and the tour will give you an excellent introduction to your own independent explorations. You can discover which areas of the city you like the most and then return there on your own. Try to imagine that. Picture yourself with a glass of wine, your other half, and a beautiful panoramic view on the Florentine Cathedral. Organizing a romantic break from your museum visits in one of the rooftop bars in Florence can be one of the most romantic experiences you do here. You can enjoy the panoramic terraces during an aperitivo, or you can go for a very, very romantic and special dinner to one of the rooftop restaurants. And there is another article I wrote with a list of the most recommended rooftops in Florence. Remember to read it before you decide to come to Florence. I've already mentioned that very romantic are possible walks in the Florentine gardens. My favorite of those is the Rose Garden. It's actually one of my favorite places in whole of the city. We, as I mentioned before, always come here with my husband for some little romantic dates. It's just a perfect quiet place where you can sit down, enjoy the smell of the blossoming flowers and relax, admiring the beautiful view on the center of Florence and on the Florentine Cathedral. The garden connects the San Nicolo neighborhood with the Piazzale Michelangelo. It has been created during the 19th century thanks to Attilio Pucci, who was a Florentine gardener, and he inherited this tradition of Florence as his father was the last gardener of the Grand Dukes of Tuscany. Today the garden preserves many rare varieties of roses. There is also a corner dedicated to a Japanese garden, and within the garden you will find some very, very funny, fantastic creatures, the sculptures of a Belgian artist, Jean-Michel Folon. These sculptures represent fantastic animals, beasts, protagonists of children's tales, as Folon started his artistic career as an illustrator of children's books, and then his figures actually became statues. There was this big collection of his art donated after Folon's death to the city of Florence, and the city decided to locate it actually at the Rose Garden. If you decide to visit the Uffizi Gallery with your other half, you might look for some romantic artworks. I have to say that it's not easy to find in a museum dedicated to the medieval and Renaissance art, artworks that correspond to our idea of love and romance. And this is because in the past, the relationship between people were not based on reciprocal feelings, but more on social standards and rules that would govern, for example, marriages that were contracted and arranged. And so it's not easy to actually find feelings as we understand them today in the historical art. Yet there are some artworks that will really capture you with the fascinating romantic stories that they tell. One of them is, maybe surprising, an image representing the Virgin Mary and baby Jesus. I'm talking about the Virgin with Child and Two Angels by Filippo Lippi. This painting is actually related to a love scandal from the 15th century, as the author of this painting, Filippo Lippi, lived his life as a friar. He worked in Prato, supervising a female nunnery, and there he fell in love with one of the nuns, Lucrezia Buti. The girl got pregnant. There was a big scandal because of this relationship, forbidden relationship between a friar and a nun, but that story actually ended with a very, very happy ending. Lippi had a very, very strong relationship with the Medici family, and thanks to them he managed to obtain a special permit from him and Lucrezia. They both abandoned their religious communities and married. They had a son, Filippino Lippi, who will also become a painter. This story is related to the image of the Virgin Mary because many people think that the Virgin represented on the panel is actually the portrait of Lucrezia, and the little boy holding baby Jesus that looks at us is actually the portrait of the couple's son, Filippino. On the second floor, in the corridor connecting the two wings of the gallery, at the window overlooking the Piazzale degli Uffizi, you can see a very small Roman statue representing Cupid and Psyche. This is one of the most romantic ancient myths. Cupid and Psyche were a couple. Psyche, however, experienced this relationship with Cupid in a very particular way. They would meet at night, and Cupid didn't want Psyche to actually look at him. So she actually didn't know very well who was she in love with. They were very happy together, but Psyche had jealous sisters who told her that if she doesn't know who she's actually in relationship with, this guy could be some very old, ugly man. And so one night, driven by this suspicion, Psyche actually turned on a candle and actually looked at Cupid and saw this beautiful young man laying down in her bed. But Cupid woke up, and because Psyche actually broke their agreement, he left her there desperate and abandoned. Psyche was really suffering because of the loss of her lover, and that desperation brought the gods to a council. They decided to help her, and they tried to convince Cupid's mother, Venus, to actually somehow allow Psyche to stay with her son. Venus arranged trials for Psyche. She had to pass some tests to prove at the end that she is worthy of this relationship. Psyche successfully goes through all the trials and the couple is reunited. This myth is a very, very romantic story. For the Romans, this story was also an allegory of the growth of human spirit and the process of perfection during our life. For us today, it's a very, very romantic story of a very strong love that won against many adversaries. Another romantic painting I wanted to talk about is the famous Venus and Cupid, painted by Alessandro Allori for the Duke of Florence Francesco I. This work celebrates the love of Francesco to Bianca Cappello, a girl who for a long time was Francesco's lover, to become, at the end of their life, his second wife. This is a story of a little love triangle in Renaissance Florence. Imagine Francesco, who marries Joanna of Austria, his official wife and the daughter of the Habsburg Emperor. Joanna will give Francesco 7 children. They will be the parents of the famous Maria de' Medici, who becomes later the Queen of France. Yet, during all the duration of the marriage with Joanna, Francesco had this relationship with a Venetian noblewoman, Bianca Cappello. Bianca for a long time was Francesco's mistress. They would spend a lot of time together. They would escape from the crowds of Florence to the beautiful villa at Pratolino. Francesco will make for Bianca a palace, few steps from the Pitti Palace, the palace of Bianca Cappello, just to make sure that Bianca is always nearby. And then after the death of Joanna and after the death of Bianca's husband, the couple actually married. She became Francesco's second wife. For many, the circumstances of their death are also quite romantic, as they unfortunately both got malaria and died in distance of few hours one from another. So they also died together in the Medici's villa in Poggiacaiano. The last romantic artwork I wanted to talk about is actually a representation of a battle of Montemurlo, painted by Battista Franco Veneziano. It might be surprising that I mentioned romantic elements in an image representing the victory of the Medici's army, the army of Cosimo I, over the Republicans at Montemurlo. However, at the center of the scene, in the sky, there is a little detail with the ripe of Ganymede. This is a detail taken directly from a drawing that Michelangelo Buonarroti sent in a private letter to a man he was violently in love with, which was Tommaso Cavalieri. In that letter, Michelangelo described all the virtues of Tommaso, telling him how much he actually worshipped him and how much he appreciated Tommaso, and enclosed 2 drawings representing the rape of Ganymede. Ganymede was the only male lover of the very promiscuous god Jupiter. Jupiter is shown as an eagle, actually raping the young man. It refers, to Michelangelo's desire Tommaso. Tommaso actually made those drawings public. They started to circulate quite immediately and became a very, very frequently quoted element that would be included in other artworks by the artist who wanted to mention the great art of the great Michelangelo. Another super romantic experience that you can organize in the city is a beautiful boat tour through the Arno River that you can also organize at sunset. The tours are organized from May to September, obviously on the days with the good weather, and they are run by the so-called Renaioli, the association that preserves and maintains the boats that in the past were used for economical extraction of the sand from the river. The boat tour is a really fascinating way how to discover the history of Florence through the relationship of the city with the river. You will learn about the importance of the river for the textile industry. You will learn about the history of the Florentine bridges, the many floods, and also about the story of World War II and the destructions that that part of Florence suffered at the end of the war. If this is something that you might be interested in, contact us so we can actually organize your customized romantic boat tour on the Arno. As you can see, in Florence, love is in the air. I hope you've enjoyed this little list of suggestions for your romantic getaway in Florence. Remember that if you want to include a guided tour to your itinerary, you can always contact us and we will be happy to organize your customized experiences.